Hey, everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Why is your inner critic so freaking mean? We all have that inner monologue. We talk to ourselves all day long. We debate with ourselves about eating another cookie or drinking another cup of coffee or how to respond to an email. Regardless of the topic, we hear that inner critic running through our head all day, every day. At times, this little voice can actually be helpful. It can keep you motivated to reach your goals, like when it reminds you that what you're about to eat isn't healthy or what you're about to do may not be the best decision. But oftentimes, this voice can be more harmful than helpful, particularly when it gets into excessive negativity, and it can really bring you down. Basically, negative self-talk is any inner dialogue you have with yourself that may be limiting your ability to believe in yourself and your own capabilities. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your coach, Angela Pugh, and today we're talking about that inner voice we all struggle with, why it's so mean sometimes, and how it's holding you back from getting the life and recovery you really want. If you've been with me for any length of time, you won't be surprised that I have a little different take on this inner voice situation. The facts are the facts, but I have a different way of understanding it and explaining it that makes sense for those of us who struggle with substances. It's no secret that we take in and process the world a little differently, and it's because of those experiences that our inner voice can be more challenging to deal with. So where does this voice come from, and what can you do to make it healthier and more positive to support you in your life? We talked about some of this in an episode I did on self-esteem. If you want to go back and listen to that one, I'll link it in the show notes. It's episode number 206, Secrets About Self-Esteem That Will Blow Your Mind. Because self-esteem is a big part of this inner critic situation. I want to give you a quote from Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's a brain and law of attraction guy who I have a lot of respect for. And he says, nerve cells that fire together, wire together. Every time we repeat a thought, it leads to a corresponding emotion, and that leads to a behavior, right? Thought, emotion, behavior. All the while, this is reinforcing the neurological connections in your brain. You may have heard me share this with you before. Brain science was a major part of my sobriety from very early on, and that's why it makes it on our show so much. When I understood the brain had its own way of doing things, then I knew with certainty the choices I had to make and the actions I had to take to stay sober and never return to that disaster of a life I had created. It's like I got comfort in understanding that it wasn't up to me because I wouldn't have believed I could do it. But as long as I took the right actions, my brain would handle the rest. So, as events happen in our lives, we create stories about those events and the feelings that accompany them. You get your heart broken, you may create a story about not being good enough for that person, and that's why they left you. You get a bad grade on a math test in 7th grade, and you tell yourself a story that you aren't good at math. You relapse a few times, and you tell yourself this elaborate story about how hard sobriety is and that you'll never get it. All of those stories are bullshit, by the way. Now, you can also create stories based on your experiences as a kid, right? How people talked to you, how you were treated or mistreated, the stress of your home, various traumas we go through. All of the life events build your stories. The key is to understand that you can rewrite your story anytime. Just because you did it one way yesterday doesn't mean you have to do it the same way today. Just because you did it that way yesterday doesn't mean you have to continue doing it that way forever. So here's my take on what fuels the negativity of the inner critic. We all have the stories we carry from our childhoods, from our homes and parents to our friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, school and work experiences. We have all these stories that we carry, so we're already vulnerable and compromised. And as we start making little bad decisions, we're building on those stories. For me, it was seventh grade. This was a pivotal moment. I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. The only time I felt comfortable is when I was lost in a book. I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere or with anyone. My life was weird. I had a parent that was crazy. I was just uncomfortable with every aspect of life. And there were these kids that just didn't give a fuck. They stood at this certain spot before and after school, smoking cigarettes and looking super cool and not giving a fuck. And I thought they would accept me. So I started hanging out with them and smoking cigarettes. And all of a sudden, I had a new story. I had people. We were cool and we didn't give a fuck. So I carried this new identity of being a menace to society. I carried this new identity with me for years, and eventually it fueled my drinking, right? And this is the next layer of the story we feed our inner critic. Now I'm drinking, which lays a beautiful foundation for terrible decisions. I drink every day. I smoke. I eat terrible food. I do not treat a lot of people well. I'm a liar. I'm manipulative. I'm a disaster in my life, super irresponsible with money. I use people in relationships, then discard them like nothing. I am 100% feral. And I spent years feeding that story to my brain, allowing it to make connections and wire together all of these thoughts, emotions, and behaviors of who I am as a human. Now, are all of those negative things the full picture of who I am? Absolutely not. But I didn't tell my brain about the other pieces of me where I'm an incredible and loyal friend. I'm generous and funny, and I have an ability to love that is unprecedented. But all I focused on were the bad pieces. And I continued to reiterate that story of what a terrible person I am over and over, day after day for years. Now, let's jump to when it's time to change my life, when it's time for you to change your life. We've created this identity and written this whole story about who we are and what we're capable of. We've engaged in dangerous, destructive, self-harming behaviors for extended periods of time. I couldn't almost drink myself to death on a daily basis, smoke cigarettes to kill myself, because that's what we're doing, right? When you make a conscious choice to do something that is harmful to you, it's not because you love yourself, okay? So every day, with every bad decision, I was slowly killing my self-worth and my belief in my ability to be good. So, what do you think my brain thought when I told it we have to change everything? I'm pretty sure it didn't even entertain the conversation. I had to be very stern with it and remind it constantly that I wasn't fucking around. We're going to be different now. The thing is, we have this whole identity that we built that we have to shed. And that's not an easy or fast process. It's simple, but not easy. As you make the decision to not drink today, your brain is still functioning from the story that you will drink today. It doesn't know the new story yet. That's why it jumps in with all the negativity, because it's been wired for all the negativity. Another layer of this is it is your brain's job to keep you safe. All these things we're talking about are your subconscious mind, your deep wiring, and your brain's operating system. Its sole purpose is to keep you safe. And safe to your brain means familiar. Your brain wants certainty. It wants to know what's going to happen so it can keep you safe. When you jump in with all kinds of new behaviors, it freaks out because it can't decipher whether something is good or bad. We make those judgments. Good or bad is a judgment. Your brain doesn't judge. It only knows safe and familiar or unsafe and unfamiliar. And it's functioning from the stories we've fed it. So doesn't it make sense that when you show up one day and start telling your brain things have to change, that it's going to fight back? You're going against everything you taught it. It is naturally going to jump in with all the scripts from who it has known you to be and try to talk you into staying the same. Now, here's another layer. Remember, we just talked about how your brain doesn't function well with uncertainty. So how do you think it's going to respond when you come in with a half-assed approach? 1 foot in sobriety and 1 foot out, saying you're just going to stop for a little while to prove you can control it, or you'll quit for a month or 90 days. Or another way we half-ass this thing is quitting drinking, but doing the same things with all your drinking friends. You don't have to give up your friends, but if you want to change your life, you have to make changes. So you need to interact with your friends differently in different places doing different activities. How do you think your brain feels when you say you're not drinking anymore? Then you're at the bar with all your drinking friends, or you go on the annual camping trip with all your drinking friends. Confused AF, that's how it feels. It has no idea how to support you because you aren't giving it a clear path to support you on. You see what I'm saying? That's why the committee in your head is talking all kinds of trash all day. It wants you to come back to safe and comfortable. It's functioning from an old story it's been told for years, and you aren't giving it a clear new direction. You can probably relate this to a significant other who sends all kinds of mixed messages, or a boss that's all over the place. Think about how you feel in those situations. Overwhelmed, confused, anxious, want to escape the situation. That's exactly how your brain feels. And there are 100 other biological and physiological things happening at the same time. You'll have to listen to the other 300 plus episodes to learn about those. We talk about all of them. To be successful in new behaviors, you have to prove to your brain consistently that you're doing things differently so it can write the new story. It takes an author years to write a book. Why do you think your brain should do it in a few weeks or a few months? This is your story to create. You get to be whoever you want to be. Just make sure the words you are saying match the actions you are taking, and you'll get a lot farther in the process. Your brain is designed to support you when you change. When you start engaging in new behaviors and stop engaging in old behaviors, your brain will actually start developing the new connections to support your new behavior. And then it will prune away the old connections you aren't using anymore. It's unbelievable what it will do for you. Start feeding it your new story. Start showing it your new behaviors and do it consistently no matter what, and it'll jump on board. Talk back to the negative chatter and tell it who you are today. Help it learn you, and you'll be amazed how much easier it will feel. Negative self-talk can be devastating for your well-being. It undercuts your motivation. It leaves you susceptible to depression, anxiety, obviously substance problems, and it just overall makes life harder. But you can take the steps to change the negative thoughts into more realistic ones and positive ones, and it will get you farther, I promise. And don't forget, if you want help with this and you want guidance and you want some hand-holding to really figure this out, you're welcome to schedule a call with me and see if we're a good fit. Of course, that is linked in the show notes as always, addictionunlimited.com/call. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.